Hey everybody, I'm here with Melanie from Per Daisy Reviews, and we are going to talk about
Jigarthanda.
Jigarthanda. We're going to talk about Jigarthanda. That's so bad. I'm going to be editing this clearly. Okay, hold on a second. Now, of course, I didn't have my thing ready. Okay, here we go. I am a huge fan of films about making films.
Yeah.
They love them. I don't love movies about theater, but I love movies about filmmaking. There's something about the meta-ness of it that I love. So we were talking about Jigarthanda, and it blew me away. I thought it was fantastic.
People have been telling me for years to watch it, and I just never got around to it. And then I guess it's not a direct sequel, but in the same spirit at least, the Double XL by the same director, Karthik Subbaraj, that's coming out November 10th. I'm like, okay, I need to finally see this. And Kathy, you said also people had been recommending this one to you.
Yes.
No, we watched this director's debut film, Pizza.
Oh, so good.
Okay, with Vijay Sethupathi, a very young Vijay Sethupathi.
Oh, he was so cute. Almost unrecognizable.
We talked about how creative the filmmaking was of Pizza. I mean, he did so much with just editing, simple lighting tricks, like super, for me, it's very scary, very clever, really interesting script.
Yes.
Okay, well, then that success of Pizza gave him the creative freedom to make Jigarthanda. And it is, like, I think it was a very popular film when it came out, but it's also just a complete cult classic. Like, it just, everybody talks about it. And I think it's probably this director's like most acclaimed film. I mean, he's worked with Rajnikanth, he's done other things, but I'm just saying, like, this is the one that everybody talks about.
Right.
And
so confident, and it's a perfect movie to make as your second film because, he probably struggled to get Pizza made. It became like the how to get movies made, how to work the system, how to be inside of it and get something actually released. So I think it's really a compulsion for filmmakers to want to film that experience because it's probably so surreal. And it's that weird collision of art and commerce where we know it's art, but it's also a business. So you got to make money on it or you're not going to make more movies. So there's this weird, but I want to be an artist. I have a vision. And you're like, yeah, but you got to make some money because people behind you giving you money. So I love that struggle between artists and producers, basically.
So I know. I mean, like at the beginning, Karthik, played by Sidharth, he's just like, I mean, first of all, that there's like a game show for
filmmakers,
directors.
Why is there not? Where is that show? Like, there should be one. Why don't we have that?
But I love how it becomes this blood feud between a producer and a director that are the judges.
That was right. So good.
and Karthik is caught in the middle of that. And just to like spite the director, the producer on the show is like, yeah, well, I'm going to do his next movie then.
Best film in here. Yeah, that was awesome. Just to spite him. I love that too, because immediately you feel his pain, like, Karthik, because he's standing up there. He looks super nervous. He's super cute. He's all sweaty. He's like, oh, and you can tell he's being judged. And then to have him that guy come out and say such a terrible thing to him, you're instantly like, what the hell? So I was relieved when this producer jumped out and was like, I'll make his movie. That didn't go out so well, though.
I know. And then he shows up to the office the next day. And he's
so classic.
His is like, did he really believe me? He really showed up here? Like, get rid of this guy.
I love that because that's so, like, I don't know if most people seen The Player. There was a film like The Stuntman, all these things behind and even The Big Picture with Kevin Bacon. Yeah. There's those great things where the artist goes in, they think, I'm making my movie, I'm doing this. And then they find out they have no power. So when he came in and he's like, oh, you really believed me? I mean, that's so Hollywood. I loved it because the business is the same everywhere. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Producers talk big and then they go.
And then he has all these dreams. I'm going to make this movie that comments on society. And he's like, yeah, no. I want a gangster.
Exactly. No, what you're actually going to do is a gangster movie like The Godfather. It's like, okay, I could do that. I'll do that. And that's what I loved. I mean, the whole conceit of the film is amazing because of course he wants it to be realistic, so he's like, I'm gonna make a movie about a real life gangster. Well, without his permission. And what happens when he so it does do a fine line of comedy and drama and genuine thrills because the gangster is very scary
Yeah.
at first.
I
Anyway.
mean, the guy burned a reporter alive who was researching him and writing an article about him.
In a really
Like
brutal way.
you're gonna then be like, yeah, let me just go around town asking everybody about him.
Someone's asking about you and you're like, who is this guy? What is he? He's going to find out about all your illegal activity. And so, but he decides to do it a sneaker way. Like, I'll just spy on him through his henchmen. And I love that too. Like, he makes friends with these guys because they're such dorks, right?
Right.
So
like he's researching. They have a whole chart of like, this guy loves soft porn. This guy is a drunk. This guy.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. It was such a time. And I love too where they finally get to the guy Sounder, which I love that name anyway. But so they basically just take a photo of him and then appeal to his vanity of like, oh, look how good you look in this photo. I was just so they basically just like flatter him to death. So he becomes their best friend because flattery always works, right? It's so funny. But it's always a fine line of like, what if these guys figure it out? Because they're scary for a second. Like when he found out he was taking a photo of him, he's like, what are you doing? Give me that camera, give me the film, blah, blah. And it was scary because you're like, he's right next to the guy who will burn you alive.
Right.
So,
right.
And they managed to like, and I think part of it is because he's a filmmaker and used to dealing with people in the business. He's used to kind of manipulating and a little bit sweet talking because you got to be really good at that. There's more than just you're an artist. Let's make a film. There's a lot of
like, let's just drive by their house. And they go down and they realize there's a dead end alley. And they're like, no, we have to go back.
Like, it's like, oh, what now? Oh, no. I mean, it was so they decide they'll just like put a bug through Sounder and bug the guy. And they're not trying to get him arrested. They really just want to learn about like what he's doing and make it seem real, But he
and like, how would he deal with things? How would he talk? They want to know all of that.
And they're hearing very bad things. And I love when they're all like,
the competing Don was watching Titanic with masks on his face. Oh my God.
The Titanic scene was amazing because it's a film about filmmaking, film fans. Like it just shows you the levels, So I love that. You're right. First, you just see this room, Titanic's on the TV, like in the background. You're like, what? Next thing, pokes his head up with DiCaprio mask on. What the hell? And then she pokes her head up. She's like, Kate Winslet. It's like everybody's got their kink, I guess. It's a little Titanic kink that they have. They want to like make it real. So that was hilarious. But it's again, I love the affection of the film, like filmmaking films. They transcend everything. It's just a big Hollywood film. It's even like transcending into the gangland. It's like so good. That was hilarious. So the humor is built on character and situation, which is so good. It's not even cheap laughs. It's really good laughs. But they played us too. I mean, this movie, we were along for the ride. Totally believe in it all. That's what I love so much about movies because you can't trust anyone. So I love unfortunately, and because it's this movie, it's about gangs, they have their hard-hitting moments, like, when we're talking spoilers, when they end up killing Sounder, who didn't even know that he had the bug. So that was kind of shitty, and they were kind of like,
he had been ratting out Bobby Simha's gang too.
Oh, that's right. He had double crossed.
He had warned him that, and so that, the fact that he had talked and that was
in trouble. Yeah. So they did have that also. Yeah, you're right. He was kind of double agent and it wasn't cool. And then of course they find out and but Titanic. Anyway, so good. So I love that then the main boss, what's the main gangster's name? Siddharth. Let me say.
It was like Assault Setu, I think.
Yes, I think that's maybe it is.
Need to double check.
Yeah, we can edit this.
Yes, Setu. Adult as Assault Setu.
Setu. So Setu discovers the two of them very easily because they're not criminals. They don't know what they're doing. But I love that too, because the big confrontation of like, you've been bugging us. You've been listening to all of our shit. And so he brings out the machete They always have the machete,
Yeah.
and they're kneeling and looked in a creepy
And he's
dark
beating
room.
them up, and they're all
Oh,
bloody. And, oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's not good. And they're just filmmakers. They're not tough guys at all. They're not, but they're still not really letting slip what they were really doing, you know. And when they finally, at the very last, I love the very last minute, Machete's coming down. He's like, "I want to make a movie about your life." It's like, what? I love so everything's about vanity in this.
yeah.
It's movie making. It's always about vanity. I love that so much. So now the gangster is kind of intrigued, like, oh, a movie about my life. And he goes, yeah, it'll be like The Godfather and Scarface, and he's naming all these big American films. So funny. I love that. And so, of course, he's on board. So now he's like, but this is where I love this too, this inside meta thing. So here's a filmmaker who wants to make a realistic film about gangsters. Now he's got his permission, so he's going to follow him. He's seeing him do really terrible stuff, like the threats, the crimes, the murders, so he's basically, in a way, complicit by following this guy around and researching. So I love you're kind of going, oh, hold on, dude. What what are you doing? I mean, you know you're trying to survive, but so I love that little bit. It gets a like, how much are you willing to sell out for your movie, right? So
right. And then the fact that he's like, I can't make it, that the producer's giving the money, and then he's like, I'll solve your problem.
Yeah. Hey, no problems. I'll pay for it. And then they're like, but who could we possibly get to play? Now that was another thing we haven't talked about too, because Karthik is a filmmaker and just using people basically. I mean, he's not. You're on his side, but he is being kind of like.
Oh yeah. Well, the whole plot line of he realizes, oh, there's this girl that's kind of looked at me, but her mother's cooking for the gangster, and supposedly she could be the gangster's wife in the future. Yeah. And then so he tries to be her boyfriend. They go on all these dates, and her confrontation, oh my God. Okay. Like her whole storyline and how she sets things in motion. Whoa.
So good. So good. Woman scorned. Watch out, people. Like, don't. She had a very critical role when he says who should play the gangster, and they look at her. She's like, I think he should play himself. And they're like, oh no. Well, what you find out is like they're all terrible actors. Him, his henchman, awful. And so I love that, because now Karthik's freaking out because he's like, my movie's destroyed because nobody knows how to act. What are we gonna do? So he hires an acting coach.
Oh my God! All of this part killed me. Okay, this actor, I have to name him. Guru Somasundaram plays Muthu, this acting coach who slaps the gangster, who makes him do all of this stuff. Oh my God, that was the funniest part of the movie.
So
every scene with him was comedy gold. Every scene.
It was so good because he was like, I'm going to teach him the way I teach actors. They're just going to deal with it, because you're like a little bit scared for him at first, because you're like, dude, you're like slapping a guy who burned a guy in a field for no real good reason. It's like, for a good reason, but still he burned a guy alive in a field. So I love that he was like putting them through the grinder, like really humiliating, acting exercises and really like weird stuff. Like, I love too that they almost, I love that they kind of poked fun at it, because acting coaching is so ridiculous. Like the exercises they put people through, it's also like so like the worst. So I love that they made fun of that, because the exercises were so stupid. But eventually they find out, well, the henchmen still cannot act for shit, but there's a little tiny bit where the Setu can act. They're kind of like, okay, maybe we can make this work. So they just start working. They start filming. They start making their movie, which I thought was great, because they kept showing some behind the scenes, but then a little bit in front of the scenes. So you're always a little off kilter.
And the acting coach is like doing stuff to like make him cry and do whatever that needs to happen for the scene.
Making him cry all the time. It was so good. And the scene,
and you're terrified for Karthik, the director.
Yes.
With this entire thing, because you're like, oh my God, this film is going to be horrible.
Yep.
And it's going to go well. Yep. And then he's going to be killed.
Yes. That's exactly the setup, because the movie does not look like it's going to be good. The guy is still a terrible actor. It just looks bad. So you're feeling bad.
I mean, he can't, the gangster Setu can't even do the songs like without looking ridiculous and like grabbing the dancing girls inappropriately and just being just like unbelievably bad.
Being a brute, because that's what he is. He's just sort of, I'm playing myself. I'm going to be myself. He's trying to act, but he's also just being himself. So yeah, I love like all the action. Like he didn't want anyone to beat him, so he kept beating everybody else. Everybody's like beat up. It's like these poor actors. It's like, what happened to you?
And all the stuntmen are like, he's really hitting me.
He's like, he's not supposed to hit me. And that was so funny. So you have a little bit of that like crossover, which is also kind of disorienting because you're not sure what's real or not real. Even when he's really hitting him, you're like, looks like he's, and then you find out he is, and then you're not. So amazing. So finally the movie is finished. Yay! Everybody's back. They have a big premiere. This was so good because he comes in, he thinks he's a hot set too. He's like, I'm so hot.
I
shit.
totally did not know what was going to happen.
I know. I was very scared.
I was totally surprised at this movie premiere scene. Oh
so
my God.
Good. It was so terrifying because I thought, okay, there's so many ways it could be really good and everyone's surprised, or he can look really bad and then be furious and kill him instantly. I mean, there's only two ways to go, and it did not look like it was going to be good. So they start playing it. so, and I'm like, what is this movie? He turned it into a comedy. They dubbed his voice. They only showed scenes of him crying the whole time. Like he only got his things his way because he was crying. Crybaby Kumar.
and all the scenes of the acting coach abusing him and slapping him are in the movie.
Yeah, that's actually, so a lot of the behind the scenes are actually in front of the scenes. So it's like, so that was hilarious. And so everyone starts laughing.
Then you get to see scenes that we had seen before of the filming. Then you get to see the director slowly like motion, like, they motion to the camera to turn so that they're capturing all of these crazy, really, and making them funny. And the audience is dying laughing.
They are roaring how funny it is. And so he's like, his friends sitting next to him going, and Setu's like, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It's gonna get better. And he realizes it's not getting better. It's just he's being humiliated.
And even his goons
starts laughing.
They can't help laughing.
They can't help it.
It is so funny. They can't help it.
And you see Karthik. He was in the back, like watching this, going.
He was watching it through the windows of the door.
And he's like, "This is great."
He didn't even want to be in the room, but he was waiting to hear because he knew what he was going to hear. He knew he was going to hear the laughter.
Yes. So he's like, but feeling pretty good about it. But I was like, dude, you just signed your death warrant right now. What are you doing? Like, I was like, what? Couldn't believe it. Like, oh my God, this is your first and last film ever. It was scary and funny at the same time.
I mean, because every poster all around town was definitely of this like Rajnikant action. Like that's what all of them looked like.
Yep.
Like these super intense posters. Which had nothing to do with it.
Nope. Welcome to film marketing. We do it all the time.
I was to say that the gangster had sent all his goons around to give people tickets because he wanted it to be a success. He wanted people in the theaters. So everyone in town, was in this movie theater
to see this humiliation.
Yeah.
So at the same time, people love it. They love it. So he's furious. He can't believe it. Karthik, sensing this, like takes off and disappears. Like he knows.
He goes off into hiding. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thing we sort of in a way left out is that Sounder had a wife and kid.
Yeah.
So that comes into it later a little bit. So the mob boss have got to find this director. He's got to be killed. But then I don't remember how long it took, but all of a sudden he started realizing that people were loving him.
I think he stayed in his house and he wasn't seeing anyone and he wasn't seeing the reaction because he was so humiliated.
He's hiding out.
He's hiding out in his house. And then finally, like one of his goons was just like, are we just going to, this is boring. Are we just going to stay here forever?
That's right.
And then he goes out in the street. I can't remember. Like he was off to do something, violent. And Sounder's little wife and little girl come up and she's like, my daughter loves your movie. Could you just please say hi to my daughters? She loves you.
He was like, she just the biggest fan. And he's like, what? And uncomfortable on many levels, but kind of going, huh, they love me?
And then he's like to his kids, like, don't they know? And they're like, no, they don't know. They think the other guy killed him.
Yeah. So he's in the clear, technically.
Right. Right.
Then he goes into the movie theater just to listen, to see what's happening.
And he's watching like all these little kids loving it.
Just having a great time, and everyone's enjoying it. And he becomes like basically kind of a star. Like he becomes a beloved comedian. So he kind of embraces it.
And there's a key moment in that he had told the director, Karthik, this is my mother who hasn't spoken to me for 12 years.
That's right, the mom.
Because of what I do. Yeah. She lives in this house. She won't accept a glass of water from me. She won't speak. She hasn't spoken to me for 12 years.
Yeah, she's just sort of in the background, like in a corner, living in this house,
right.
Checked out.
And one of the key scenes of the transformation of how Sethu feels about this film is that his mother went to see it. And afterwards, she says to him, Sethu, get me a glass of water. Like she finally speaks to him and accepts food from him. And the stunned look on his face, like,
so good.
All of these years of building myself up as this gangster, I had no respect for my mother. Yep. Now being ridiculous on screen, she's willing to talk to me.
Right. He's seeing
like he never thought of another path for his life.
Right.
Like I can't ever be anything else than this one thing.
That's right.
Than being the king of the gangsters, the ultimate Don, who is in control of everything in this town. Couldn't think of another way to be. And suddenly, because this director turned his horrible acting into a comedy, he has another path in his life where young children could run up and want to, have a picture with him. Like,
he's an inspiration.
It was just the look of the actor Bobby Sinha's face.
So good.
In those scenes were amazing because he had shown us this terrifying gangster.
Yeah.
Really terrifying.
Yeah.
And then just to see the dumbfounded, wait, people could love me instead of just fear me? What?
Yeah. See, he equated respect with fear, and he didn't realize that they can also just really care and laugh at you and care about you and get your respect. Like he just thought you had to rule with fear. So all of a sudden he was like, whoa, wait, I have a new path. I thought that was great. That was a really good scene. He's a great actor because you were on board with him now. Like you're like, yeah. I almost felt bad for him when he was being humiliated, almost. And then that's how good the acting is. You kind of come around to him like, oh, he can find another way. It's so cool. So, but he's still got to find Karthik. Karthik is hiding out, partying. We're having a great time out in the desert.
I love how they're looking everywhere, and he actually stayed close to town because he thought there's no way that they would even think of looking so close to town.
Exactly. They'll be looking everywhere else. So funny. So when there's a big confrontation, it was a good, great, scary confrontation where Karthik and Sethu, Karthik's on his knees.
Yeah.
It's like, he pulls his gun, Sethu pulls out his gun. It was a gun, not a machete this time, right?
I don't remember.
All the weapons are blending, but they have a big confrontation. And so Karthik has a gun in the back of his pants, like any good gangster filmmaker would have. So he's ready to take out Sethu if he needs to. So he's like, but it turns out he's like, you know what? I'm going to let you go. You go your way. I'll go my way.
You know what it was? He had poured gasoline on him. Like they accidentally.
Oh, that's right.
And that was part of it. It was like this huge confrontation on the road. They accidentally ran into each other. And then he was going to light a cigarette. He was going to light the match and then throw
that's
it
right. He had the little, like, oh my God. Yeah. So there was a lot of tension, but then it just sort of diffuses and they go, yeah, you're okay. I'm okay. I've got a new path. You've got your path. Let's do it. So they just kind of separate and go their own way.
And so then you're like, where is this film going to go next?
Yeah, I know. It's like, so is that the end? So then you see Sethu sitting in a chair in a house and you're like, you're thinking, oh shit, this is bad news. Maybe some his past caught up with him. And so a bunch of these guys fire on him and shoot him and kill him. And you're like, oh fuck, that's what happens to him.
I don't know if you remembered, it was a repeat from the opening scene.
Oh, you're right.
In fact, a line and like a movie star from the past is playing,
That's
his family
right.
playing, and then
it
it
was on
says,
the screen.
"Kartik has a message for you."
That's right. They had that great movie on the wall during the opening scene. That was great.
Right, so it's a repeat, but a different perspective of the opening scene.
That's right.
And now we learned, because then Setu gets up. How did I do?
I know. I love that. You're so faked out, and then it's like cut. You're like, okay, I wasn't. So he's an actor now, which is so I love that. But the best scene. So we cut to Karthik. What's he up to? Well, he's a big director now. He's a big deal. So he's in his office, but it turns out all of Setu's henchmen are now henchmen for him now.
Actually, he walks into Vijay Sethupathiy's office.
Oh, he walks into his office.
And he's like, you will be in my next film. And Vijay's like, yeah, I'm not sure that I have the time for that.
Yeah, he's like, I'm kind of busy. I don't think so. I don't think I would. That was so. And when I saw it, I'm like, wait a minute, is that Sethupathi? What? Wait, what? It took me a second. And then you finally go, yeah, my wife is a big fan. You're going to be in the movie. That's just the way it is. He's like, what? And then he starts realizing, yeah, he's got to be in the movie. Gotta be in the movie.
I mean, and then you just, I don't even remember the line, but it was just like, you see that Karthik internalized all the lessons that he learned from the gangster on how to intimidate people.
That's right.
And be the one in power.
Yep.
And he's got the henchmen around him to back it up. They became his henchmen. Like everything about it, especially Siddharth, the way he's sitting in the chair, the way we have seen him be this cowering, whatever, naive guy, to having him being this badass boss.
So good.
and it wasn't the first time Vijay Sethupathi appeared in the film, because there was a sort of as Setu was narrating his early life, Vijay Sethupathi in the imagination is playing him.
Which is hilarious. I didn't think about it.
But I mean, Vijay Sethupathi owed part of his career to Karthik Subbaraj for pizza.
That's true.
So I'm sure he was like, yeah, sure, I'll do a cameo in your film. But that last scene, I mean, you're just like, I have been on this ride, and then to have that as the capstone at the end.
So good.
Perfection.
Perfect.
Perfection. Okay. I went that night after I finished watching this film, and I marked it in Letterboxd, which is a movie diary, if you're not aware. 5 stars. I'm just like, 5 stars, no notes, awesome. Like, I mean,
exactly.
They told me this film was fantastic.
Right.
It was it lived up to all the hype of whatever anybody had told me and beyond. And I have seen most of Karthik Subbaraj's films. This is the best. This is the best.
So good.
And it makes me like 10 times more excited for the next movie coming out, Double XL, because we've got S.J. Surya playing the filmmaker. Are you kidding me? Like,
so good. And they've had such great promos for it, like great promos. So I love the promo where there's, it looked like just a scene from the movie where he's a guy, you don't know really who it is, silhouette, he's in the shack, and then you have the filmmaker outside. So good. Like and I didn't know anything about this movie. So when I saw it, I'm like, I don't get it. Oh wait, that's weird. So it's a movie about movies. Cool.
Right.
Now that's been going on for a long time, but now the movie's it's eminent. And now we've seen this, and I'm extra excited because this is, and the one little thing too, Setu ends up marrying Sounder's wife.
Yeah.
Who was his fan. So,
right.
But doesn't know.
And there's this whole, and he, like on the film set, he's like, I'll be right with you, honey, And then there's also the subplot with the love interest played by Lakshmi Menon.
Right.
Who is like, she screws Karthik, the director, by suggesting that Setu play himself in the movie. And then he gets revenge on her by saying, "Oh, she's been watching you. I think she has a crush. When you guys get married." Like, I don't even remember the line.
It was so good.
But like, and then
she's terrified.
They both kind of realize, in the heat of the moment when they wanted to get revenge on the other person.
Yes.
They went like the ramifications of those little statements went so far. Like Karthik could have been killed from making this movie and having it be a bomb. She could have been forced to marry this gangster for the rest of her life. I love she has this speech like, can you figure out a way to save me? Because I'm not going to like cry over you forever. I'm the kind of person that's just going to like be like, okay, and I'm going to move on. If I have to marry this guy, then fine.
Yep.
Oh, I love that speech.
So good. She was so strong, and she wasn't just like a catalyst for other action. They actually gave her something to do, which was great. And she was kind of had her own mind.
Like, thank you for in this movie filled with men to have this really interesting woman character, like with her own flaws, who sets things in motion, but also like that speech. Oh my God, it was
so
one
good.
of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah,
so then you know what we hear in that final scene with Vijay Sethupathi is that he did marry her, and when he's saying, "My wife is your fan, so you will be in my movie."
That's right.
We find out he did get to marry her.
I know that was so good.
I mean,
it tied up all the loose ends in the perfect way without feeling too cloying. Like sometimes like it's too tidy, but this was perfect. Like I saw it and I went, satisfying, great ending. Loved it. So I also have no notes on this movie. It was perfect.
I mean, it just, and also I kept thinking about the fact that I have seen a lot of Tamil movies about gangsters, about the origins of gangsters, about the wars of gangsters. And this was fresh. Okay. Like I was seeing certain things that I have seen before, but it was from a different perspective because, for instance, Karthik is listening to it.
Yeah.
Horrified or whatever. Like there were different angles on familiar scenes that I had seen a million times, but now I had a different perspective. Or he's fooling us by like the opening scene where it was almost like an old Hollywood Western movie, right?
Yeah,
like the guy comes in to play cards and then there's a shootout in the casino kind of a thing.
Totally.
And so he took kinds of scenes that I thought I expected, knew what I expected, and then turned it on its head.
Yep. Even the gangster, he had depth and he had dilemmas, and he was ruling not only just with fear because he wanted to scare everyone, because he was so scared himself and insecure, and his mom didn't love him anymore.
Right.
So he was even more. So you saw this level where by the end of it, you were almost rooting for the guy. You wanted the guy to be okay.
Yeah.
So that is astounding that you could do that with a character you saw burn a man alive. Like unbelievable.
But like, I mean, one of my favorites is when he's trying to rule over all of his subordinates who are fighting over who's going to get to kill this guy, right? And this guy is kneeling in his office in his house or living room, essentially, in the house.
Yeah.
And the guys are fighting over it. And then one of the subordinates just goes over there and just knifes him. And he looks at him and is like, seriously? In the house?
He's like, you made a mess. Now we got to clean it up.
And then the cops are about to show up. Like, I loved how they just like threw the dish of food on the floor. Like, we're just mopping up this food.
Cleaning up this
red. Yeah.
That's so gross.
But I mean,
you just came in when we
reaction, just like, seriously, you did that in my house?
I know, he was so funny. It was so good. Because his henchmen weren't great. I mean, they were bad actors. They were kind of just, people who were completely morally bankrupt and didn't care about any of it, but they weren't necessarily good at anything. Not great. So that was also a little tiny bit of the fine line of humor and drama and scary that they were so good at.
I mean, and there were just tiny moments of humor.
Yeah.
Like the fact that Karthik is a film, like he meets the one goon that he's trying to butter up, and they meet him they realize, okay, he goes to see soft porn movies all the time. Okay, we'll talk to him at the movie theater. Then they're like giving him, I love it that they were giving him all these foreign softcore porn films. Yeah, I got a Korean one. Yeah, I got this German one. Just leave it on your bike. And then the scene where the goon realizes that his child has taken the DVD and puts it in front of the whole family, and his wife he's at the doghouse. Oh my god!
Good. Oh my god! It was so
that's
good.
what I'm just saying. Like they set up, and then comedy, total payoff.
Total payoff, and it was always unexpected. Like you never know where it's going to come from. So Yeah, really great, really masterful, great stuff. And I love the insider stuff. I love the idea of the whole filmmaking and what's real, not real. That all stuff is
Yeah.
just always works for me, and they did a great job in this movie. So,
I
A
mean,
plus.
you don't know, but there's all sorts of rumors about gangster money being
Yeah,
in film.
yeah,
Okay,
always has
especially in
been. Yeah.
India
Hmm.
when there was black money and just I'm sure it still goes on, right? Like it
Yeah,
was a way to launder money through film.
that's right.
And so the fact that you could have a gangster saying, no, you will, you will make this kind of film or
Yeah,
whatever, like totally believable.
yeah.
Totally believable.
Because filmmakers are desperate to make their films. And if you're turned away from the studios, you have there's no other way. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't do it unless you spend your own money. And many a filmmaker has bankrupted themselves and never done another film because they can't. It's just expensive.
Right.
And if your movie doesn't make money, you will not make another movie unless you want to finance yourself again. So people turn to weird financial things just in like,
Right.
this will
Well,
be my calling card.
or if we've seen that directors have turned to acting to
Yeah.
make enough money to make
Yeah.
their next film.
Yeah.
Like just recently GVM, Gautam Menon, we just did a reaction to his upcoming film of Bikram, which has been on hiatus since he had to abandon filming in, I think, 2016 because he ran out of money. And so I've seen GVM do all these acting roles, and I think that's part of it. Like, right? Like he had to build up enough cash to get him through to then make the film that he wanted to make, right? So it's a really hard path to make a
Really
film.
hard. Really hard. And it's such a tiny business, and you have to know people, and it's totally insidious. And we also just saw that movie that was crowdfunded, and they had all the
Lucia.
Lucia. And that's another way, which I love, that filmmakers are now kind of finding another way outside of the studio system to make their movies too, because you kind of have to. I mean, it's just so limited. And
well, I mentioned to you just before we started filming that Sidharth saw the original Kannada Lucia, and then I think he was instrumental in getting that. He started the Tamil adaptation of that, the Tamil version of Lucia. And I really like Sidharth as an actor. I've more seen him in romantic roles.
Yeah.
And so I loved seeing him in this movie because I felt like he really got a chance to stretch, to do all different kinds of things. Like he was playing the scenes where he was kind of shyly romancing the girl. That's what we've seen. That's what people know of him. And for him to be using her and turning on that, like that was an inversion of his reputation as an actor, and then using the audience to kind of trick us because we're like, oh yeah, we know he's really falling in love with you. Like, so right, cute. Like so
and then we're playing with the trope.
And he's another way in with the director, with the gangster done.
I mean, he in a way wasn't that sympathetic a character, even though you were on board with him, because he did some really terrible things to get his movie made, which you feel like is also commentary on what filmmakers have to do to get their movies made. It's like, and apparently this was also a South Korean film from 2006 called Dirty Carnival, which we should probably watch.
Yeah, that I would be interested in.
I would be interested in that.
I also thought the soundtrack was pretty banger. I liked the music in this film as well.
It was really good.
And Santhosh Narayanan, it's like it was a really great score, really added to the movie. Just so many standout supporting actors. I already mentioned the actor that plays Muthu. I did say Lakshmi Menon as the love interest was awesome. We mentioned Bobby Simha. I'm not sure that Bobby Simha, who played Sattu the gangster, has had another as big of a lead role. I've seen him in other supporting roles, but I'm not sure I've ever seen him have. I mean, he was so great. He was
great.
So great.
Kind of surprised when you see an actor who's so good that they don't break out. I'm always surprised.
Karunakaran, who played Orni, who was like the friend who shows Karthik around the town, and he owns I think he owns a sari shop or whatever. Like he's just like looking for excitement himself, and just as a part of all of the shenanigans. He was also really good. So
and he was in Bachchhan, which I think I said that right, but I love that movie. That movie was great. Another like creepy sort of what's happening, what's real, not real. So good.
Yeah. I mean, this, like I said, this film literally is a 5-star movie for me. I
It was
just
perfect.
really, really loved
So
it.
good. Like if
And
you love The Player or anything like that, you would like this movie.
I just was kicking myself for waiting so long to finally get around to see it. I mean,
No.
there's so many great films, but this
Yep.
is one so many people had recommended to me, and I'm sorry. I'm apologizing to
I
all of
know.
you because you were right. You were right. You knew I would love it, and I did love it, and I'm sorry.
And we're so sorry we took long. And then we do have a poster, which I don't think the poster does it justice.
No.
Not a great poster.
And it's also, I mean, it's showing the gangster on the bottom, you
Mhm.
know, centered.
Yeah.
But it's kind of making us feel like, oh, it's this fun
It's a
love
big,
story
joyful,
with
fun
this one
thing.
guy who's kind of
Yeah.
probably getting in the way of their love story.
Yeah, I
It
mean, it's way
doesn't
too
really give
comedic.
us the feeling of what this film is about,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it's not, and there could be other posters. This is just the one I found. I do like the idea that it's printed on, like, it looks like a piece of either dark paper or tin or something. I can't quite
Oh,
tell
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
I kind of like that little border and the treatment,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know if I got the illustration. I mean, I know they're probably making fun of movies somehow. This is probably a call out to another movie. I'm guessing it's
Oh, you're
probably
probably
almost
right.
so inside that we don't even get it. But I would
Yeah.
love to hear more if anyone had knows what this poster's based on. But
Yeah.
I'm glad I do like the new double X version is a great poster. so,
Yeah.
so that's our review. Well, that wasn't even a review. That was just basically a total like love fest. Wow,
Yeah.
we loved everything about it. So highly recommend you guys watch this movie.
So if you're getting ready for Double XL and you have seen this movie a long time ago, it's worth rewatching.
It is.
I'm
Definitely
just
rewatch
saying.
It's not a chore to watch this movie. In fact, I'm going to tell more people to watch this movie because it was great. Okay. Catch you guys
And
later.
it would be fun to see it again, just
Right.
knowing where it's going and then to see how some of the setup
That's
happens.
true. Yeah, you're right. It's one of those rewatch movies where now that you know, like the fake outs, you can kind of see the little clues that you maybe missed the first time. So it's a very tricky movie. Highly recommend. If you watch this review, you already everything's spoiled. It's still worth watching because it works. Okay. All right, you guys. See you later. Bye.